Hello, it's Laurana Smith again, and welcome back to Talks on Learning Disabilities. Today I'm going to give a practical example on how the cognitive spectrum works. I'll talk about a student of mine. I said in a previous episode that I'm a teacher. I used to be a high school teacher, and I had this student in this one class that had a few problems with learning. He was basically very slow in performing tasks. Basically, I suspect he had a processing speed disorder, and some of the counsellors and support teachers thought that he had that problem too. He was basically very slow at reading and writing. Usually what I used to do in this class was we had to copy some text from the board, and I would get all the students to copy the text from the board, and this one student was very, very slow and he was holding up the class. Everybody else had finished copying the text and he was still writing very slowly what everybody else had already written. And I found that this was a bit of a humiliating experience for him. So I modified the lesson for him. And for all other students, I would get them to copy the text. But for this student in particular, I'd give him a sheet, get him to select text from the board and fill in the blanks. And that way he only had to copy about 10 words instead of the whole text. And he was able to keep up with the rest of the students. So he was a really lovely boy, really lovely student. This was in year 10, and we were looking at a text of Mary Shelley's Frankenstein. And we got talking in the class about technology, about how it can be used for good or it can have negative effects. So we started talking about, for example, traffic, how cars made it very convenient and quick to get from one place to another, but the downside was that you get traffic congestion and accidents. We talked about other sort of technologies, like for example the atomic bomb, the atomic energy, and we were saying how you can get energy from harnessing the atom, but you can also get like atomic bombs. And then we started using another example, which was the aeroplane. And the aeroplane, we were saying, was invented in 1903, but by World War I, it was already being used to drop bombs and to have dogfights. And this student, who was very slow, he said to me, so basically you're saying they weaponized the plane. And I was really impressed because basically, while this student had problems with this part of the spectrum, basically the analytical skills, putting the pieces together, he was very slow at reading, very slow at writing. But when it came to working out that people had weaponized the plane, he used this side of the brain. He used Gestalt. So that was a light bulb moment. So even though this student could not make full use of his cognitive spectrum, he gravitated towards this side of the spectrum because to compensate for the deficits on this side. So he was very bright and had those light bulb moments of intuition that would carry him through because he was, after all, a very bright kid.